Janice, are you there?
At your service, sir.
Give me the Patreon request video.
Will do, sir.
Anyway, it's hard to pinpoint the origin of Black femininity YouTube, but it's pretty clear that it is a response to the masculinization of Black women that has occurred for centuries. Black women in particular watch these videos because they feel like they need to strip themselves of these stereotypical labels and want to be perceived as more feminine because that usually leads to better treatment.
Response: the feminine urge to be feminine? Feminism ignores biological differences between men and women. Welcome to Manosphere Highlights Daily. Shout out to our Patreon supporter Mr. Feria for sending us this video. He wanted us to make a video about it, so you got it, brother. Thank you for your support, and Patreon gang, salute! New Patreon videos coming soon. First off, this is not a diss video. I repeat, this is not a diss video. We just don't agree with everything she presents in this video, and we made this channel for educational purposes, and there are some interesting things we can take away from Amanda's perspective. Amanda is a good content creator. I agree with almost everything she says in this video. She's on point with the definition of femininity. She mentions that much of the content on these femininity channels is not necessarily gender related, like having good manners is universal.
To be fair, some of these coaches recognize that it is unrealistic to only have feminine energy and admit that there are certain times and places for masculine energy, but my biggest thing is just like, why can't you be yourself? I feel like it creates unnecessary stress to worry about if you're putting masculine or feminine energy out there. If the goal of this is to be a pleasant person, that shouldn't be gendered.
Agreed, 100%. Now this is where we are not on the same page. Check this out.
But two of the biggest issues with these femininity coaches is that their advice largely centers around changing yourself for a man in order to be in a relationship, and that it places too much of a premium on respectability and appearance.
So her issues are that these coaches center their content on changing women's behavior to get a man. Interesting, right? Why would this be an issue? We're gonna let her explain why. Now it's time for us to dive into this and do what we have to do. Because we men and we. We men and we.
So let's talk about the man issue first. A huge part of femininity content is centered around dating and relationships, with the end goal being to marry a high value man. This is also known as hypergamy, the practice of marrying up into a higher social class.
Stay focused, guys. She said high value man, and she said hypergamy. Stay focused.
In an article on femininity coaching in Refinery 29, Shantae Joseph sums up the issue with how femininity coaches tend to frame these kinds of relationships. There are a million ways to be a woman, yet as these coaches proliferate, women from all walks of life are being taught or even groomed to secure a financially stable marriage where there is no incentive for the man to be perfect for the woman. All he has to do is fulfill the nondescript role of provider.
This is where I have an issue, because female nature is disregarded when these feminists write their articles. And it's not just their articles. But like I said before, she said hypergamy. That's part of female nature. Women will naturally look to date up, to marry up. That's why these channels are blowing up, because this is the information that women in general are looking for. There might be a million ways to be a woman, but there are only a few ways a woman can get a high value man. Because they are rare. Why do you think Kevin Samuels' channel blew up? It's not because he was talking to men. Women want to know the blueprint of bagging one of these high value men, and it doesn't matter if he has a great personality or not. Can he provide the lifestyle that most of these women crave? Tinder swindler. There are enough guys that are nice and well mannered. These guys are friend zone, put on reserve. We have a video called Women Explain Why They Love Men with Money. It's all in there. Women don't love you for who you are. They love you for what you can do for them. It's female nature. Let's take it a step further.
Femininity coaches frame marrying up as a form of empowerment, and while it can financially empower the women who are able to do so, that's as far as its empowerment extends. It's not really doing anything to improve the position of women as a whole.
What about improving the position of the people? We talked about low birth rates in our previous video. But let's not go there. What position do women want? Actions speak louder than words. We've proven it many times on this channel that women don't want the same things men want. And to take it a step further, women in general do not want to go through the same process to achieve the intended goal. You don't earn $1 million. You make $1 million. Some women prefer to take $1 million. And yes, when they succeed, they get applauded for it. They get applauded for it because the power lies in a woman doing nothing and getting the world back in return for it. That's the ultimate position. Why do you think women like Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian are idolized?
It's interesting because this idea of marrying rich and being a housewife has kind of gained traction even in more lighthearted, joking contexts. And obviously I understand where people are coming from, like if you didn't have to work in an office for 40 hours a week, why would you? But I think this rhetoric inadvertently implies that being a housewife isn't real work, which is far from true.
Hold up, what do you mean by being a housewife is quote-unquote real work? We'll get back to this later. This meme right here says a lot. This woman is literally drinking that feel-good Kool-Aid, the feminine urge to get a law degree, not use it, and become a housewife. Feminism gave women this idea that being a housewife is slavery and that being independent would lead to freedom and happiness, ignoring that freedom makes a huge demand on every human being. With freedom comes great responsibility. Most people will not have the job or career of their dreams. And this educational system doesn't prepare people for what's coming after school. Women's happiness has been on the decline since the 70s, and it's not a surprise that this happened since women massively joined the labor force. Women burn out faster, quit their jobs faster. We are not built the same. She says housewife. This means a man has to carry that load, and this is 2022. Women still expect men to take care of them. Reverse the roles and you'll see what happens.
Femininity, especially the version these coaches promote, is heavily associated with taking care of the household. But this notion has less to do with the nature of women and more to do with the nature of capitalism.
Okay, now we're gonna get it, guys. Stay focused because she says women taking care of the household doesn't have much to do with female nature, but with the nature of capitalism. So I'm gonna make sure that you know what capitalism is. Janice.
Capitalism is an economic system in which private individuals or businesses own capital goods. The production of goods and services is based on supply and demand in the general market, known as a market economy, rather than through central planning, known as a planned economy or command economy.
Keep this in mind. I'll get back to this later.
I'm always gonna find a way to incorporate capitalism into this. Don't you worry. Italian feminist Silvia Federici coined the concept of the patriarchy of the wage, which is the idea that under capitalism, wage relations are used to create and maintain gender hierarchies.
Aha! This is feminist ideology. And we all know what feminists do. Brace yourself, guys. Let's get into this.
In a 2017 interview with Revolutionary Left Radio, Federici talks extensively about this idea, which she wrote about in her book, Caliban and the Witch. She notes that with the advent of capitalism, the whole area of reproductive activity, housework, procreation, etc., is declared off the economic radar. This, she says, is one of the major transformations that takes place in social relations.
Aha! So this is what you mean when you say being a housewife is quote-unquote real work. As in, you should get paid to be a housewife. The foolishness.
In this interview, Federici shows how housework became feminized under capitalism, and I'm just gonna quote this big-ass chunk of transcript because she says it so well.
Femininity is a product of patriarchy, not capitalism. You can be in a socialist society and still see the same expectations and representation of femininity because that society is built by men. This means that they will raise their daughters in a certain way and instill certain norms and values. This shouldn't be taken lightly because men are very protective of their daughters. Unfortunately, in modern times, being protective could be seen as controlling. And to take it a step further, feminists do not fully consider the circumstances of the past and the effect of those circumstances on human behavior. I'll get back to this later.
In the feudal period, or in any society where production is for consumption, you don't have a separation between production and reproduction. If you have a community or village where the peasantry produces for its own use, you don't have a separation between production and reproduction because what you produce is also reproducing you. For example, today in many parts of Africa or Latin America, the process of reproduction or domestic work begins by putting seeds in the land. You grow food, you grow enough for the market, but you also grow enough for your family. It's what you eat. So that agricultural labor, that subsistence agriculture, is production and reproduction at the same time. You don't have the separation.
Exactly. This is what I'm talking about. The conditions in which agriculture was the norm, people adapted to this norm. You had big families, the extended family. Janice.
A family unit that includes grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, and uncles, etc. in addition to parents and children.
The family would take care of itself. In the Harlem series, they were talking about the Mosuo people, glorifying the matriarchy. Check this out.
After the boat ride, Lucy invited me to her house for dinner. She's 32, has a son, and lives in her family home with her mom, sisters, and all their kids. There were no men around. All the women got involved in the dinner preparations. It was fascinating to see how her family was completely self-sufficient, bringing every meal from field to table on their own. The concept of supermarkets is still pretty new to them, and many Mosuo make less than $200 a year, so they're relying on producing their own food.
This used to be the norm. What were you going to do differently in those times? You want to apply for an office job with air conditioning? At that time, there was no contraception, and it was normal to have 5 to 7 children. What happens when a woman gets pregnant? Do you think she'll be working in the field? She probably stays in the house and takes care of the household. Let's take it a step further.
But with capitalism, that changes drastically. You begin to see a bifurcation. The two activities, production and reproduction, begin to separate in all kinds of ways. Production for the market becomes a male job, and it's a wage job. It's a job that is actually socially recognized as work, as producing wealth. Whereas more and more reproductive work, raising of children, procreation, domestic work, care for the elderly, that becomes women's work. So reproduction becomes feminized and also at the same time completely devalued. It's not recognized as work. It's not given a wage, it's not paid, and increasingly it becomes so invisible as work that it's naturalized. It's considered women's labor, with the idea that somehow it's something that women do because they are women. It's not socially or historically defined as work.
And this is why we cannot take feminists seriously, because they disregard the circumstances of past societies and female nature. After the agricultural revolution, we had the industrial revolution. So instead of working the field with your extended family, now your husband would go to work in a coal mine or factory, and you would take care of the household, creating the nuclear family. Why do people go to work? Why did men go to work? It was to take care of that nuclear family. Why do people get paid for their labor? Janice.
Wage labor. Employment as an employee for a specified weekly wage or monthly salary, normally on terms and conditions determined by the employer, whose offer may be constrained by employment law, collective bargaining agreements, or pressure from trade unions.
That's why being a housewife is not considered quote-unquote real work, because you are doing what you are supposed to be doing, and that is taking care of your children. You're supposed to take care of your children. You're supposed to clean your house. You're supposed to prepare food. You're not gonna eat? Please show me the person that's willing to pay me for cleaning my own house and feeding my own kid. The foolishness. Only women can get pregnant. Working conditions were not safe in those days. Working hours were much longer those days. And people would have more children in those days. So it only makes sense that women stayed home to take care of the children and the household. This doesn't mean that it's not appreciated.
So this separation is very important. It's part of the reason why in capitalism you have a gender hierarchy. Men have power over women through the wage. Through the wage, men control women's reproductive labor in the family. Through the wage, the state delegates to the men the power to control women's work. to make sure they perform. And that's why domestic violence has always been tolerated. It's understood that it's okay to slap your wife if she doesn't cook or keep the house clean. It's a part of the discipline.
It's not just the wage. Once again, the biological differences between men and women are ignored. In modern times, where women are free to do whatever they want, they prefer to operate in social fields. That's not a coincidence. Women love to work with people. They are not interested in STEM fields. They're not interested in building things. A perfect example are the Survivor TV shows where men and women would compete against each other on an uninhabited island. They had this TV show in 3 different countries, and in every country, the women would struggle with the basic things like finding camp, building camp, catching food, even cooperating with each other. And men had to build them out every time because these women would have died multiple times if this was not a TV show.
I can't be cold one more second. I was thankful last night that we stuck to our guns a little bit after tribal and didn't run over and jump in the men's shelter. But going over there this morning, I have no I've never been so miserable. I couldn't get my tail over there to that fire fast enough. Come on, guys. Ladies.
Oh, hey, guys. Didn't see you guys coming.
No wage oppression on those islands. And these women would constantly get their asses kicked in these challenges to earn rewards for their tribe. Because men are physically stronger, faster, have more endurance, perform better under stress, and the list goes on. No wage oppression, just human nature doing its thing. Feminism only comes to existence when the world is built. These so-called strong and independent women only come to existence when the world is industrialized. Where are these businesses? Where are these groundbreaking inventions by women? Capitalism, right? You're free to start your own business. It's a free market. If women are smarter and can do everything better than men and they can do it in heels, where are the results? The WNBA is the perfect example of women crying wage gap oppression. But women are not watching their games. Why?
Why?
Because women are not interested in sports like that. And women in general are not interested in doing the things that make this world go round. And unfortunately for women, these are all the things that pay the most. The wage gap has been debunked many times. Women don't build. And once again, in those days, women do not have the options they have today. Industrial age, mostly physical labor.
So there's a whole patriarchal structure that is created in capitalism to ensure that the reproduction of the working class does not cost anything to the capitalists, or that it costs very little. For free, women do all the work that the capitalists would have to do in order to enable millions of people to go to work every day. So the infrastructure that the capitalist class would have had to create to enable people to go to work every day is unfathomable. Women have really done an enormous amount of work, and for no pay, for no recognition. The fact that housework has been invisibilized and devalued is not accidental. It has nothing to do with women's bodies and personalities. To achieve that feat saves the capitalist class billions of dollars. Women have a big bill to present to the capitalist class. They have provided an enormous amount of work that otherwise the capitalists would have had to provide. End quote.
This is ridiculous. Women's happiness has been on the decline since the 70s, and this quote from this feminist is a good example of the kind of foolishness the feminist movement has brought to women and the world. What makes people the happiest, according to research, is family and relationships. And this feminist is presenting it as a chore, as quote-unquote real work. Work women have done for free to ensure the reproduction of the working class. You see how superficial this is? Last time I checked, it takes 2 to tango. The male contribution is totally ignored and is taken for granted. What if you have children that are not productive? Should you still get paid for raising them? Do you have to give the capitalists their money back if their investments don't pay off? Where does this money come from? We've shown you the definition of capitalism. An economic system in which private individuals or businesses own capital goods. It's a free market. Supply and demand is a key factor. This is not socialism. Most of the things that we consume are not provided by the government. You don't have to pay for energy, water, or the internet. Check this out.
In the US, about 15% of the 300,000 Amish settlers live right here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and they are known primarily for three things: simple living, plain dressing, and avoidance of modern technologies.
They don't connect to our electricity. It doesn't mean they can't generate their own with solar or wind power or even a diesel generator for business. They don't drive automobiles. If they have a business that requires a truck or riding lawnmowers, they can certainly lease a truck, but they would have to have a non-Amish to drive the truck.
The Amish migrated to Pennsylvania in the early 18th century and are still living an identical life to centuries ago. They get around by horses. They are prohibited to use smartphones, TVs, and cars. Their language today is a dialect of German called Pennsylvania Deutsch.
We buy most things out of convenience, and now it's hard to live without these things.
I've kind of felt like there was something inexplicably icky about this modern femininity movement, and it kind of just boils down to the fact that it promotes traditional gender roles in the name of innate femininity, when it's really unpaid labor disguised as women's natural disposition.
Oh my goodness! That's not what this is about. Hypergamy, remember? They understand that being a housewife is not quote-unquote real work. These women don't want to do real work. They want a man to do that for them. At least be a safety net to ensure that she will be good. And that's the thing with feminism. It liberated men. We don't have to take care of you anymore. We're free. We don't have to put a ring on your finger to hit it. You can take care of yourself now. And women just had to learn the hard way that being a housewife is actually very pleasant compared to real work. We made a video called "You Can Make a Hoe a Housewife Because a Hoe Can Do Housework." Housework is not hard. We break down the hours in that video. It's nothing. It's being the wife part that modern women are struggling with. Question is, how does a woman get a man to sacrifice his time, money, and energy to take care of her? Because in modern times, men don't have to do that, especially a high-value man that provides this lifestyle that these women crave. Women have lost the art of being a housewife, a helpmate, complementing the masculine with the feminine. And that's why these women are looking for help. They don't know how to be a woman that's worth having.
As we can see, the origins of traditional notions of femininity are problematic, but it is understandable that Black women who have been denied access to this femininity for so long now see the opportunity to embrace it as a form of liberation. However, femininity coaches tend to overemphasize the importance of appearance and respectability politics.
I agree with her on this one. Unfortunately, it all starts with your appearance. Men don't care about your degree, your job, career. We don't give a shit. One of the first things that men notice is the smile. And sisters have some of the hardest faces. 80% of Black women are obese. You're not gonna get a high-value man if you look like a lamb wheel. It is what it is. I'm gonna give Amanda the last word. Amanda, thank you very much for your content. Keep up the good work with your YouTube channel. Like I've said before, this is not a diss video. We just disagree on this one.
And now for my final thoughts. I originally wanted to make this video because I just found the concept of femininity coaching to be very bizarre, since one, it's something that is kind of hard to actually define, and two, it's something that isn't really taught, it's just absorbed depending on one's culture and upbringing. I do see how the things femininity coaches teach might help women gain more confidence in themselves and their appearance, but I think it's a mistake to brand femininity as a thing that can and should be achieved by adopting certain aesthetics or behaviors. And while these coaches are certainly promoting positive qualities like being caring and compassionate, it doesn't sit well with me that those things even need to be gendered. Not to mention the more problematic promotion of changing your disposition to be more docile or submissive in order to please a man. Femininity coaches brand femininity as some innate thing that women need to unlock from within, but it's simply not true. Cooking, cleaning, and smiling while doing it is not innate to women. It's innate to the capitalist notion that women's reproductive labor should be invisible and free.
Manosphere, we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.